back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
It's a legal matter, baby. A legal matter from now on.
And welcome to The Law Show on CL 650. Joining us today, Joe Murphy, QC and partner at MurphyBattista in downtown Vancouver, and Mike Murphy, also from MurphyBattista. So we touched on summer safety. We didn't really touch on boating, but I'm going to sort of segue boating into the lawsuit aspect. Do people realize that they need to have a boat insured the same way they would a car? For example, would your home policy cover your boat? Say you had to boat out on Lake Okanagan and everybody's having a great time and there's an accident. What kind of coverage would a boat owner have? Do you know much about that, or the kind of policies you're supposed to get?
Zach, I know because I have a small ski boat, and I need a separate policy. My basic homeowner insurance policy doesn't cover it. I have a separate policy. It doesn't cost a lot. But really, the issue of boat safety involves if I am driving the boat or if someone else is driving it and they cause some harm. It could be running into another boat, could be running into a dock, or worse yet, it could be running over someone in the water, or it could be an injury to someone in the boat. And what's not known to most people who aren't familiar with the water is if you're towing something behind the boat and you bring that item and the tow rope into the boat, that line becomes a real danger, because if it's being pulled out, if you're tube and you're letting the tube out, that line can snag someone. And if it's going fast enough, it pulls them into the water, and it could result in them being terribly injured, or it could result in them drowning. Mm-hmm. And people in boats just don't have the sense that there's any danger. It's not like on a road where you have to watch pedestrians and other traffic. If you're in a boat on the lake and there's no boats right beside you, you think there's no danger there, but in fact there is. You watch people who are water skiing, and what I watch is you watch and see how good or bad they are at water skiing, but I also look and think, does the boat have a spotter? Because I know from doing a lot of water skiing when I was younger, you need a spotter in the boat, and you need the operator of the boat not to be looking at the skier, but to be looking forward, which is why you need that spotter there. But there's a real attraction if you're a keen water skier for the boat operator to look behind and see how this person is doing. You can feel them pulling the back of the boat, but you're curious, okay, what's happening? Yeah. But the boat owner's got to be looking ahead, because you get people in the water. I know in Vancouver, English Bay, you get some people 200 or 300 feet off the beach. So, you get people on these little paddle boards.
You can't see them, yeah.
You can't see them. And when it starts getting dark at night, they don't have reflectors on, they don't have lights on. And they can be hundreds of feet off the beach.
Can people operate a boat without insurance? Is that common, that people just have it on the back of their trailer, they drop it in the water and say, hey, we'll go out for the day?
It's not like a car that has a license plate and the stickers that show your insurance is up to date. There isn't an obligation to have boat insurance. There isn't an obligation once you register your boat once and it has the registration number that you have to renew that. So it's quite possible that you get someone who has a boat that's not insured, and then if something goes wrong, if someone's badly hurt, you've got to say, okay, what's going to happen now?
All right, so the remainder of the show, we're going to do a flip here towards protecting yourself from a lawsuit. Now, Mike, what are the keys to protecting yourself? And people worry about being sued and all this sort of stuff. So going to walk us through the process.
I'd say the most important part of protecting yourself from a lawsuit is ensuring that you've got sufficient and appropriate insurance. For example, if you're driving a car, it's a third-party liability number. In many cases is $2 or $3 or $4 million. That's the number that's going to be protecting you in case you make a mistake and that mistake ends up injuring somebody else. So I'd say the most important steps to protecting yourself from a lawsuit is actually what you do before the incident happens, and that's working with an insurance broker to make sure that you've got coverage for what might happen.
I have a question around that. I have 3 cars, and all 3 of them are insured to $5 million for liability. And say I'm not driving one of those 3 cars, and I'm driving a friend's car or what have you. Is there any way to use that coverage I've paid for my other vehicles if anything was to happen with driving my friend's car?
The BC insurance policy that people don't get, it's a big book, says that if you're driving the car of someone who's not in your household and there's an accident, that your coverage can be used to top up their coverage.
So if they only had $250,000 minimum liability insurance.
Minimum's 200, but if they have the minimum and you got $5 million and you're sued, then ICBC provides that $5 million for you, provided they're not a member of your household. So
the owner of the vehicle.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if you have a son who lives at home and you're driving his car, it's not going to apply. But if you have a relative and you're borrowing their vehicle and there's an accident, then it does apply. Your coverage does apply, which is one more reason why you want to have, in my mind, the maximum coverage with ICBC, which is $5 million.
So having redundant insurance, having every vehicle at $5 million, is that
You
wise?
can't. If you have 3 vehicles, you can't insure one for $5 million and have the other 2 covered. You have to do each of them. It's better to have too much insurance, and it's better sometimes to have a duplication of insurance than not to have enough.
And the difference between $1 million and $5 million is not that great. I found in what I'm paying for it. I figured, what's the maximum? 5, I'll take it. It's not worth it.
Bargain.
Now, what about if I lend my vehicle to somebody else? What kind of liability do I have? So Mike, I give you my car,
Yep.
and then something happens.
Yep. I think it's Section 86. It's the Motor Vehicle Act indicates that you're vicariously responsible for the driver. So if I've got a vehicle, let's say I'm 65, I'm about to retire, I've got $2 million or $1 million in third-party liability, and I've chosen that amount because my driving history is good. Maybe they haven't been in an accident in 20
You only
years.
drive 5,000 a year.
Exactly, but maybe at a party, the niece or nephew show up and they need to go get milk from the corner store, and you throw them the keys. They end up accidentally running a red light and striking somebody. It's that policy that's going to protect both the driver and the owner. And in many cases, depending on the severity of the injuries, $1 million might not be enough, which puts them at risk of perhaps losing their house and certainly having their retirement plans changed.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way to have somebody come and visit and take your car and they buy a short-term policy? Do you know of that?
Actually, you can probably do that, but the law in BC and the law across Canada is the owner of a car is just as liable as the negligent driver if an accident happens.
Why would that be? I mean, I had nothing to do with the accident.
It was designed to ensure that if you want to own and operate a vehicle, that there's enough insurance coverage to pay the person who's injured by that vehicle. So it's really public policy, but that's the case across Canada. In the States, there is no such liability. It's called vicarious liability, which means I, as the owner, am vicariously liable with the driver. But the reality is you're liable for anything that happens with your car, provided you gave this person permission to drive the car. If someone steals your car, you're not liable. But if you loan it to whoever and they have an accident that causes huge damages, you've got to make sure you've got enough insurance, because you sue, as the lawyer, we sue the driver of the car and the owner of the car. Always sue both.
And it's not, you're talking about personally sue them, not just the insurance company.
When we start a lawsuit from a car accident, we don't sue on behalf of our client ICBC. Our client sues the owner and driver of the responsible vehicle,
who then turns to their insurance company for coverage.
They just say to ICBC, here, you deal with this, and ICBC does deal with it. And oftentimes the person doesn't hear from ICBC after that. If it goes to court, they obviously do. But if it doesn't, that's just ICBC deals with it.
What is UMP? Just tell me quickly.
UMP is coverage I buy so that if someone runs into me or my family and they don't have enough insurance, ICBC will top it up.
All right, I want to talk about UMP when we come back on CL 650. You're listening to The Law Show.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.